Ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the American Chamber of Commerce in Cyprus, I welcome you this Cypriot afternoon and American morning on our first digital event titled Making It in America, How Cypriot Entrepreneurs Can Succeed in the USA Market. The American Chamber of Commerce, or AmCham as commonly called, is an organization with presence across the globe, speaking for and supporting the American companies. In Cyprus, AmCham is an association under the auspices of the Cyprus Chamber of Commerce and Industry, with its offices in Nicosia. One of AmCham Cyprus' objectives is to promote, expand, and encourage economic and trade relations between Cyprus and the United States of America. For this purpose, we felt that an event like this would be of great value, not only to our members, but also to the entire Cyprus business community with an interest in the US market. The United States is a business-oriented environment characterized by a sense of entrepreneurship and risk-taking. Economic growth in the United States is constantly being driven forward by ongoing innovation, research, and development, as well as capital investment. The US is the most open market in the world, with an annual trade volume in the trillions. It is therefore very important to know how to approach this market, identifying the right trading partners, and seeking relevant and accurate business advice. We are very lucky today to have with us a group of people on the panel that I'm certain will provide to us their valuable knowledge and experience of the US market and what an entrepreneur from Cyprus would expect and do to increase the likelihood of being successful in the United States. I would like to say a big thank you to all our panelists for being here today, to the Honorable Ambassador of the United States in Cyprus, Judith Garber, and to George Demosthenos, Maria Markidou, Georgiadou, Marina Chatsopoulos, and Andreas Panaghi. I'm leaving the introductions of the speakers to my fellow AmCham board member, Monica Ioannidou Polemitis, who will be moderating the panel discussion. And I also thank her very much for working very hard on this event. Monica, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Haris. It was a pleasure to work with you on this event as well. Good evening, everybody, or good morning, depending on where you're based. I would like to give a warm welcome to all of you. We are grateful for your presence here today, and we look forward to an interesting and stimulating discussion on how Cypriot entrepreneurs can research, identify opportunities, and launch operations in the US. I'm certain you'll find our speakers' insights helpful, no matter what your company's stage is, whether you are a startup, a scale-up, or a mature company. My name is Monica Polemitis, and I will be moderating today's discussion. At this stage, please allow me to introduce our speakers. It's an honor to have with us the Ambassador of the United States of America to Cyprus, Judith Garber. Ambassador, welcome.
Glad to be here.
Andreas Panaghi, serial entrepreneur, co-founder, and managing director of Genesis Ventures. Andrea, hi.
Good to be with everyone.
Marina Chatsopoulos, board chair of Levitronics Technologies. Marina, hi. Good morning.
Hi there.
George Demosthenos, CEO of Boston-based Voda.ai. Hi, George.
Hi, Monica.
And last, but by no means least, Maria Georgiadou, Managing Director of Cyprus Seeds.
Γεια σας. Ευχαριστούμε για την πρόσκληση.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm very excited to be having this conversation with you. Before moving on, I'd like to share some details on the structure of the discussion. I will address each speaker separately and pose an initial question. This will allow us to set the context of the roundtable. Meanwhile, since we are online, we have the opportunity to be more interactive with the audience. something that is not usually practical and during offline events. Therefore, feel free to send us your questions in the chat, and we'll try to answer as many as possible during the time allocated. If your question is towards a specific speaker, please mention that person's name before the question. Now, you will allow me some introductory comments to let you know about the rationale behind today's event. Launching in the US is very attractive and a great opportunity to increase client base, get in front of investors, and boost credibility. And there are significant pull factors of doing business in the US. For example, in contrast to Europe, where there are significant frictions in commerce, the US is a unified market and a much bigger one than many European markets aggregated. But starting operations in a foreign market does not come without its challenges. In order to succeed in the US arena, entrepreneurs need to be open to adopting new perspectives, develop a deep understanding of the needs and preferences of that market, and very importantly, create a support network to guide them. Today, we will aim to address these points and give you, hopefully, enough information so that when we come to the end of the event, you will have an awareness of what the next steps should be in your endeavors to enter the US market. Having mentioned all of this, I would like to turn to our first speaker, Ambassador Garber. Ambassador, again, welcome. The US is consistently ranked among the best internationally for competitiveness and ease of doing business. I understand that international entrepreneurs can very easily find information and practical tools on how to do business in the country. Could you give us some more details on the mechanisms that are available for obtaining such information?
Absolutely, Monica, and thank you for that question, and thank you to all the participants who are joining us today. Despite the economic and investment challenges which America and the global economy have been facing in the last few months, I would argue that it's as true as it's ever been that America is a great place to do business. Immigrants and foreign investors from all around the world have always found ways to thrive in the United States, to build some of our most important and innovative companies, and to increase global prosperity. But it's also true, as Monica was pointing out, that the size and complexity of the American market can seem daunting at first. And I hope I'll be able to provide a little bit of context this evening and point you in the right direction for where you can gather additional information tailored to your company's specific needs. As I'm sure of you, I'm going to start with some real basics. As I'm sure most of you know, there are 50 states in the United States. There are also 5 territories plus the District of Columbia. And in addition to federal laws and regulations, each one of these states and local governments has its own taxation system and regulatory framework. Each also offers different landscape for investors, different labor pools, and other unique advantages or challenges for the individual investor or entrepreneur. Because of these differences, you'll find that some places may be a better fit for you and your company than others. Some of our local economic zones are famous throughout the world. For example, Silicon Valley in California or the Financial District in New York. Some are lesser known, but may offer great opportunities for you. Did you know that the traditional insurance capital of the United States, for instance, is Hartford, Connecticut, or that in Alabama, that there are over 300 aerospace companies? The United States is a big, diverse place, and getting to know a small portion of it is very advisable before you attempt to start doing business there. Many exceptionally dynamic industries in the United States that represent opportunities for growth and success align with growth sectors in Cyprus. Energy development, infrastructure and services, for instance, or financial services, travel, tourism, and hospitality, software and IT, and of course, professional services as well. These are leading sectors in both countries. Before you venture into these or any other field, though, it's important to be well informed. And it's not going to surprise anybody on this particular, in this particular event, that the internet is probably the best place to start. My staff at the embassy has prepared a one-page summary of some excellent reference sites to help you get started, and I understand that Monica has that available and may be able to share that with those that are interested. I'm going to talk about a few of those resources on that list right now. First, Select USA. Select USA works with entities across the US government to facilitate business investment into the United States. It works one-on-one with companies to demystify federal rules and regulations, provide data, and link companies with potential partners and resources to help them succeed. Since its inception, Select USA has facilitated more than $66 billion in foreign investment in the United States. Select USA just released a very detailed investor guide with all the information you need to get started, including an overview of common business structures in the US, key US tax considerations, compliance with employment laws, investment checklists, and choosing and applying for the right visa. The guide also lists the restrictions and limitations for foreign direct investment. Second, the US Small Business Administration, or the SBA. The SBA can provide you with great guidance in launching a business in the United States. They can advise you on everything from big issues like choosing your business location or ideal business structure to tasks such as applying for permits and opening bank accounts. Both the SBA and Select USA are resources that any entrepreneur or investor can tap. There are also some resources that are tailored to specific groups. With all due respect to the two male panelists today, I couldn't be more pleased to see that you are outnumbered by women. That happens all too infrequently in the United States and here in Cyprus when we're talking about entrepreneurship. The State Department, however, has established an Academy for Women Entrepreneurs last year to provide women entrepreneurs with the resources, the network, and the skills they need to start and scale a successful business. The Academy has created a platform for women entrepreneurs called Dream Builders. It offers free online courses to any woman looking to develop the skills and knowledge to start or grow her own business. Steve Jobs, the son of a Syrian migrant who fled persecution in Syria and came to the United States, and who is better known as the co-founder of Apple, said, "Your work is going to fill a large part of your life, and the only way to truly be satisfied with what you do is to believe the work is great. And the only way to really do great work is to love what you do." I would add to that. I would say in order to love what you are doing, it's enormously helpful to love where you are working. Whether you want to live in the United States or Cyprus and expand your business to the United States from Cyprus, I think everyone can find a place in the United States that they can love and that it can help them do that great work. I hope you find the resources that we talked about this evening helpful, and that you now have access to some useful tools in establishing yourself in the American market. Monica, back over to you.
Thank you, Ambassador. That's valuable input, and I can confirm that we have received 2 documents from the embassy with very important information, and we will be sharing them with all the registered participants of the event. And my main takeout from what you have said is that you need to do your research before deciding or before venturing into the US, which gives me the opportunity to turn to our second speaker, Andreas Panaghi. And Andreas, it's true that entering the US market requires a significant amount of research and a carefully thought execution plan. Whether we're talking about a scale-up, a startup, a growth stage company, or a mature company, a common mistake that entrepreneurs make is that they know their product well. They think that if it's already successful in a smaller market, it will equally succeed in the US, or they can replicate their launch strategy into the US. But that's not always the case. I know that you have been working and supporting Cypriot entrepreneurs who are considering the US market for a while now. What is the key to a successful market entry? And is there a secret recipe for success?
Thanks for the great question, Monica. And hi, everyone. Glad to be here. Wish I was in person, but next time. Let me start first with the end of what I would have otherwise closed my statement. With confidence and a lot of pride, I can tell you that in our last 2.5 years in working with or meeting with, reviewing Cypriot companies, there's a lot of them that have every right and they belong and they can compete in the US market. We have no lack of smartness, energy, ideas, innovation. We just need to make sure that we continue to give these companies, these entrepreneurs, these folks time, experience, expertise, and a bridge to connect the two business networks, countries. The ambassador set it up perfectly, and the U.S. Embassy is doing a fantastic job in creating these opportunities. But now let me go back to the fact that it's probably not as easy as it sounds sometimes, and it's not as romantic as we want to make it be sometimes. And just as Monica, what you just said, the U.S. market is a very big market. It could be extremely lucrative and wonderful an opportunity, but it can also be punishing and with not a lot of second chances if you don't do lots of the homework that needs to be done. First of all, one of the key things that we need to constantly remind, at least the companies that we work with, is that there's lots of variables that one has to really look very closely to decide how to prioritize their thinking about entering, and then the plan to enter the United States. The sector, the industry, the market, the consumer versus B2B, services versus product, all those things need to be factored into whatever preparation needs to be done. And preparation is probably the number one point that in our work, in what we do, we see, and we constantly, whether we work with the companies or not, we just want successful Cypriot companies to enter the US, whether we directly work with them or not. One of the biggest awakening moments that we see is when either a company that we work with or a conversation that we have specifically with the Cypriot market, because I'm going to stick to that, is when people realize that, as the ambassador said, this is possibly about 52 different markets with 52 different consumer profiles and buying triggers and regulatory guidelines and you name whatever you want to call it. Well, that's what makes the US wonderful, great opportunity. But the realization that what works somewhere else probably will not just simply work in the United States because of the diversity of the markets in every aspect of the business is incredibly important to understand and really consider as one of your strategic imperatives. How you research the U.S. market is much different how you would research your own local market and quite honestly your regional markets. You can't just rely on Google and research. It is imperative to actually speak with and interact with the market in the process of preparing your planning. One of the things that I will say, and I am a Cypriot and I will say it, and because I don't want to offend anybody, but I want to be extremely real because we've seen it and we work with it and we have to address it. In addition to looking at all the different things that a company, regardless of where they're based, they have to have the right team, the right resources, the right value proposition, the scalable value proposition, the homework, the competitive reviews, the competitive analysis. one of the key things that we have to make sure that we understand and acknowledge, and we use that when we work together with our companies or in the process of selecting who we work with collectively, is the ability to be flexible, agile, innovative, and understanding that even though Cypriots know everything, because we do, sometimes it's best that we sit back and we listen, and we don't get into, we know everything, we don't need advice, we can take care of everything ourselves. And that is something that comes along with a lot of the things that we make sure that we make part of our introductions and our selection process, an ability of the entrepreneur and the team to understand that you've got to be flexible, you've got to be innovative, and you cannot assume that you know everything. This is a very big and wonderful market. Lastly, as I mentioned in the beginning, understanding and realizing that you can actually make it in the US, and the confidence in selecting how you plan for it is probably one of the most important insights that I would give to anyone that is remotely considering the United States as a market. It is wonderful, rewarding, many opportunities, but you have to start and end it the right way. Thanks, Monica.
Thank you, Andrea. That's, again, very interesting. And I take note of all your points, and particularly what you said last, which is entrepreneurs should not be afraid of the US market. They should see it as an opportunity to expand, but at the same time, they should be aware that it's a big market, a very diverse market, and a very competitive one. Which gives me a nice pass for my next question to Marina Hatzopoulos, actually. Marina, how important is it to have a strong product which is either patentable or already patented when dealing with such a big market where there is possibly a large number of competitors already?
Sure. First of all, just by way of encouragement, I want to remind people or tell them if they don't know it, that over half of the billion-dollar startups in the US have at least one immigrant founder. So immigrants are very successful in the US. And I think that has to go with that sort of inner drive. But to your specific question, when deciding what market to pursue, an entrepreneur wants to put themselves in a position where they have an inherent advantage over large incumbent companies. And so you don't want to go into a market that a company like Google has already invested millions of dollars in, or is interested in, it's in their strategic path, something that they can put so many more resources toward. You want to find an opportunity where you have something that nobody else has. And the best way to do that is if you have a patented technology, so that the patent is broad enough that it can exclude others from entering the market. So for example, at Z Corporation, our 3D printing company, we had a patent from MIT, which was broad enough that even when some very large companies were looking into it and trying to reverse engineer our equipment, they weren't able to infringe because the patent coverage was so large. And often this kind of technology exists at research institutions, universities, and so that's a very rich source of invention where somebody who wants to start a business but doesn't have an idea can go to find opportunities. And these are, the harder the science, the more opportunity there is to establish a very clear value proposition, very strong product differentiation, so that then you can charge a premium to your customers, and they are begging for it. I mean, that's really, you want to be in a situation where you're solving a very big problem for your customers and they are dying for this solution.
Thank you, Marina. It's clear that you need to have a unique sales proposition to make it, for sure. It's clear from your insights and Andreas' insights. And of course, you are involved in many initiatives of the diaspora which support Greek and Cypriot entrepreneurs that are interested in the US market. One such initiative is the Hellenic Innovation Network, with which our next speaker, George Demosthenos, is also actively involved. George, could you tell us a little bit more about the Hellenic Innovation Network and the CEO group that has been developed under your leadership? I'm particularly interested to understand what kind of support you provide and whether you are addressing entrepreneurs in specific industries or of a specific maturity level.
Thank you, Monica. The CEO group is a safe place where CEOs can exchange ideas and openly talk about everyday challenges we all face. Whether these are related to markets, fundraising, or even internal issues, having a confidential and supportive group is very helpful. For example, during the COVID crisis, the US government provided incentives for companies, which all CEOs in the group took advantage of. And we're talking about six figures for each company. One of the CEOs from the group has spent a lot of money in lawyer fees to ensure that they qualify for the loan, the so-called PPP loan that came through the SBA, and to ensure that that loan is also forgiven so they don't have to pay it back. Well, rather than all of us having to pay $10,000 or more in lawyer fees to do that, the CEO member has shared all the insights that he learned, and we saved collectively tens of thousands of dollars. In another case, just last week, two of the CEOs that are in the group have mentioned that they will start fundraising. And now with COVID, it's a difficult time to fundraise. Now, it happened that one of our investors at Voda AI has asked me to find founders with technologies that are unique, that have patents, and that I believe they would be a good fit. It was just good timing. So I connected the investor with the two founders, and they began discussions. In terms of the membership, now there are 5 companies in the CEO group. Bill Yannukos is the CEO of Goodpath, Apostolos Atsalakis from Knoe, George Hayodis from Medellin, USA, Michalis Boloudakis from Kinems, and myself. We started last year with Marina encouraging that, and the whole Hellenic Innovation group. And we bring on people who meet 3 criteria. The first criterion is that the CEO has to be active, actively running a company. The company has to be making some revenue, because we want to make sure that we are all in similar stages. And then there is a unanimous vote from all current members, since we're such a small team. We meet monthly, and we also have Slack channels and other methods of communications, so that as things come up and we have questions, we can help each other without having to wait a whole month. Monica?
George, thank you. And thank you for the support you're providing to Greek and Cypriot entrepreneurs. And it's very interesting that you touched upon the issue of fundraising, because we already have questions coming about investments, and we will address them later on. But of course, one of the greatest challenges that companies are facing when entering new markets is integrating into them, making connections and dealing with a new business culture, which your organization and many other similar associations, let's say, try to bridge the entrepreneurs with the new environments. The Greek and Cypriot diaspora can significantly contribute to companies successful navigation of a foreign environment. And with this comment, I'd like to turn to Maria Georgiadou. Maria, Cyprus Seeds has close links with the diaspora, and from your experience, how significant is the support coming from the Greeks and Cypriots living abroad, and in this case, the US? And how crucial is it for new entrepreneurs looking to enter in or expand to the US market?
Thank you, Monica. Well, a Cypriot Boston-based entrepreneur, a dear friend, Anna Proutopapa, once said to me, building a startup, particularly one involving cutting-edge technology, is the most complex team sport. And I learned that the hard way, actually, by interacting with some of the Cypriot startups. Well, making it to America is even more complex and difficult, I believe, given that the US, as the previous speakers have said, is very competitive. It's very different to what Cyprus is, very diverse, and it's a huge market compared to Cyprus. And recently, it has become even more difficult to go to the US. And may I say, COVID-19 has created additional uncertainty. Well, crucial for young entrepreneurs to making it to America, in my opinion, are two ingredients: mentoring and networking. Myself, I have never made it to America as an entrepreneur. I have only been a student in the US. I worked a little bit in the US. And therefore, I can only share with all of you some of my experiences from running a non-profit organization in Cyprus called Cyprus Seeds, which is heavily US oriented and has benefited in many different ways. And I'm going to share those ways with you. So for 2 years, Cyprus Seeds has been dedicating its efforts to enable the commercialization of scientific research that takes place in the universities of Cyprus, and also for creating entrepreneurship. And through this effort, we have been told, and the participating teams have said it many times, that the biggest value has been not necessarily the funding we give, but the mentoring and the networking in the US market that we have been offering. In order to be effective with regard to the mentoring, we sought partnerships in the US with organizations, to mention but few who have been instrumental in the quality mentoring we have been giving are the MIT Deshpande Center for Technology Innovation, a center in the MIT University supporting the commercialization of innovative academic research coming out of the MIT. Additionally, the MIT Enterprise Forum Greece, which is the MEDEF chapter in Athens, offering an amazing accelerator program for startups and connecting with Boston especially. In addition to organizations like the two I have mentioned, individuals in the US, and mostly Greeks and Cypriots of the diaspora, such as Marina Hadjopoulos and Yorgos Demosthenou, who are on this panel, have also been catalytic in changing the mindset of the scientists from the universities in Cyprus. And that also was incredibly appreciated and was received as a very good preparation to the US. In particular, 4 areas that have been addressed through mentoring, which have been very useful, are the one that Marina touched upon, that of filing for a patent like yesterday as a matter of priority before thinking of going to the US. The ability to have a clear vision of how to turn an idea from the lab into a valuable product. The communication skills to be able to convey that vision and the associated value proposition. And finally, but very importantly, it was communicated to our Cypriot scientists through mentoring by our US mentors that there is need for leadership skills to recruit and surround oneself with the very best and motivated team. So that's with regard to the mentoring. I will touch upon the importance of networking. And may I say that Cyprus Seeds, again, has capitalized on the big network of the Greek and Cypriot diaspora in the US in order to be effective in networking our good scientists with the US. There is a non-profit organization in the US, New York-based, called the Hellenic Initiative. That is an organization with members, successful Greeks and Cypriots of the diaspora in the US, whose main objective is beyond providing crisis relief in Greece, supporting entrepreneurship in Greece and Cyprus. The Hellenic Initiative, beyond being the anchor donor to Cyprus Seeds, to Cyprus, supporting commercialization, has always been, since the beginning of our effort, which is 3 years now, instrumental in connecting people in the US and not only in England and many other countries, and also providing very high caliber trainers and mentors and evaluators. So recently, I can add to this amazing network and highlight the importance of the networking. Cyprus Seeds joined also the Hellenic Innovation Network, the one that George has mentioned. And one of our objectives is to mobilize Cypriot startups in order to encourage them to participate in the events to be organized by the network in Boston, because that is their intention once the COVID crisis is over. So just to finalize, it seems to me that the diaspora in the US, and in particular the Boston area, can be very, very important, like the Israeli diaspora played a significant role in building the startup nation. I believe that practically the Greek and Cypriot diaspora and the organizations I have mentioned through Cyprus Seeds and not only could play a very important role in the Cypriots making it to America. I would also like to mention that the Consulate General of Greece in Boston is very supportive and very active in organizing networking events in Boston, and that's also very useful. So having access to the Greeks and Cypriots who are already in the US market and learning the realities of that market is very important. And I would like to conclude by saying that these Greeks and Cypriots are more than happy to support and network and connect our entrepreneurs. It's their way of giving back and share some of their professional experiences and give back something to their countries. So finally, I would like to also thank you, the US Embassy in Cyprus, and to mention that also the US Embassy has proven that it can be very helpful. It has been helpful for us, but also it has supported all the other initiatives in Cyprus that promote and nourish entrepreneurship. So I would encourage our Cypriot entrepreneurs to reach out to the Cyprus Embassy because it's on the ground and it's easier to start with them. Thank you, Monica.
Maria, thank you very much. And thank you also to Cyprus Seeds and yourself for the great work that you're doing for the local ecosystem. I would like to remind the audience to send us your questions. We have a few already and we'll try to address them one by one, but please keep them coming. We still have until 7:30 Cyprus time, so we have time to answer your question. And I would like to stay on this topic of commercialization of research results and collaboration with universities, because we have a very relevant question. And I'd like to ask the ambassador, actually, whether she believes that further collaboration between universities in Cyprus and the US could give a boost to the local ecosystem and build these strong relationships from very early on that would allow Cypriot entrepreneurs to make a smoother transition, let's say, into the US market later on.
No, I think absolutely. The links between U.S. universities and Cypriot institutions here, I think, has been part of some of the successes that we've seen. I know that the embassy has sponsored, for instance, professors from the University of Texas at Austin. We also heard Maria talking about the connections at MIT. And I think one of the things that's really different in the United States than here in Cyprus is that close relationship between primary research that's done in U.S. universities and then how that path to commercialization, while still difficult, is much more natural than it seems to be here. So those kinds of exchanges definitely will help, and we are certainly looking to increase those connections with U.S. universities. Thank you for that question. It's a great one.
Thank you, Ambassador. And from the questions, I am guessing that the majority of the audience are startups, because we are getting a lot of questions on early stage issues, let's say. One of the topics that was mentioned earlier, and I said that we will touch upon it during the more interactive part of the conversation, is the issue of fundraising. And I would like to address this question to Andreas, Marina, and George. When should a startup from Cyprus, which is ready to launch into the US, seek investment from US investors? And what kind of investors should they be looking for? Is it institutional investors, strategic investors? Is there a model? And maybe Andreas, you can tackle the question first.
I can start. To be honest, I would remove the US in front of this question first, because it's not only US. The answer to a question such as that question, there's a lot of different factors that one has to look at before they even decide, is it time for investment? Is it time for strategic investment? Is it time, what's the right investment that is asked? What will you do with the investment when you do have it? Those questions, regardless of whether you're looking at the U.S. market or not, have to first be addressed as a company, as a venture, as a company, as a team. Then you can add the U.S. as one of the variables that says, is it time? Is it better to go to the U.S. and invest and find investors? Is it best to go somewhere else and then get my company, my innovation, my product and service to a point that then I can enter the U.S. market? Depending on what sector and industry, they may be easier or harder to find the U.S. investor. So the answer is remove the U.S. from the question, decide if it's time for investment regardless, and what will you do with the money, then add in the U.S. back in the equation as part of, is the U.S. market your target market? That's how I would answer. And there's so many more questions that I would ask before you can actually give that answer. That's Marina. It's George.
Yeah, I'd love to just jump in on that. I think that's exactly right. And I would look at it if if you're going to ultimately be pitching to U.S. investors, a very natural question for them to ask is whether you've received funding from your own local market. So if you've been able to elicit interest from the VCs who are investing exclusively in Greece and Cyprus, the ones that actually really want to develop that ecosystem, that's going to be a really strong sign that they should take a look at you. But the other thing is, I would say not to limit. I think venture capital tends to get a lot of coverage, and so people think that that is their only source of capital. The first place I would look is for strategic funding. So that can be from your customers, from your distributors, from anyone who has a vested interest in your own success. And the great part about strategic investment is that it also brings so much credibility to whatever you're doing, because if your customer believes so much in your product, in your solution, that they're willing to invest in it, not just buy the product, that is a great validation of the market for someone who's a professional investor who's not an expert in the market, who doesn't really know the ins and outs of the market. That really verifies to them that you're solving a very real problem. One other thing is, I would say also to look at government funding. So the EU provides tremendous amount of funding in certain areas. And also the US government provides a phenomenal amount of funding. I'm working with a startup right now. The founder is an immigrant, and he has accessed millions and millions of dollars of government funding, which is non-dilutive. So it does not dilute any of the shareholders in the business. It's been like $12 million of government funding.
I would just add one more thing to Marina's point. And this is a very general answer. So a lot of thinking has to go before you answer that specific question that came to us. But in my experience, and I can speak for the US market, when it's time to approach an investor, bring in with you not only, as Marina said, maybe some local strategic investment or whatever that may be. Bring in a client or someone that actually paid something for your service or product that you brought in. It's probably as valuable as the dollar that you will raise when it's time to raise. So sometimes we say to the folks we work, put as much effort in chasing investment as you put or more in finding your first customer, and then things will come from there. And I can testify that from the US perspective. It's a lot more value in bringing a customer than just looking for money.
Definitely.
Okay. George, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, let me add something from the founder's perspective. The fundraising, the way I see this, is a function that CEOs always need to do. You don't have to wait until you need a specific amount of money to start speaking with people. If you get a connection and you're able to speak with someone, just tell them what you do, especially if you already received some funding, whether it's from family and friends or an angel investor. You have an opportunity to say, this is the money we received, this is what we've done, this is the problem we're solving. And to echo what Marina and Andrea said, the customers paid for it. Now, when you need the money, if you have multiple people interested in your company, you create leverage because you already spoke to a few people, maybe they're interested. So when you're ready to ask for that amount of money, now you created leverage because you have multiple bidders. And the leverage, to me, was the single most important tool when I negotiated terms. And remember, especially in the US, it's easier to get money in the US than in many other countries, especially in Cyprus. But it's important to keep in mind that money isn't necessarily the win. Money isn't necessarily what matters the most. For example, if you get $10 million for the next 3 years and you give all your shares away versus it's likely not worth it versus if you got $3 million and you keep control and a reasonable amount of shares. It's a much better deal. So terms are important, not just the money. And to get the terms that you are going to want, you need to create the leverage. And to create leverage, you speak to a lot of investors. Start as early as you can. Investors like to learn what is out there, so they will talk to you. And when you're ready to say, I need the money now, it's going to be much easier for you. That's what has worked for me. And the last thing I want to add is investigate the type of funding that you can get. I heard some government funding, which is great. And I would say that's government funding, any grants, any company like Cyprus Seeds, for example, that helps entrepreneurs that show promise. You should look into that as first priority. The second one that I looked at and worked very well for me was angel money. Money from people that don't necessarily do this for a living, but in many cases, they have a lot of money and they're willing to help entrepreneurs that have passion and are solving a big problem. And typically the terms are better with angels, not always, but typically. And then the third one would be VCs. VCs have the most money, but you need to create that leverage before you go to VCs. Monica?
Thank you, George. And
Monica?
Maria, sorry, yes.
On this question, I wanted to emphasize the importance of being visible. Once you have a working prototype as a minimum and a team, in my experience, it is worth participating in competitions outside Cyprus, because there you may attract attention. For example, 2 of our teams attended competitions in the UK and Greece, and they attracted the attention of investors. It doesn't mean that they're ready to talk with investors, but at least if you're getting a signal there that you have something which is worthy, and the investors may give you some feedback, some insight, and help you progress further. So yeah, be visible. That's my advice.
And by the way, and I think I'm asking everybody, do you need a full team on the ground when you are trying to acquire investors, or can this be something to be done gradually once you feel more comfortable with moving a team to the US?
Well, for the US venture investors, they need a US presence. So it doesn't mean you can have your team of researchers in Cyprus and just have the CEO going back and forth, but they need some US presence in order to invest.
Yeah, for sure. We have a question. First of all, we have a lot of congratulations for Genesis Ventures, Cyprus Seeds, all of the initiatives that we have mentioned. And thank you for all the comments coming in. We have a question on modularity. One question is whether startups or mature companies can use the diversity of the US market as an advantage. And I'm guessing the person who is asking is talking about agility and the flexibility, and whether you can build a startup from the beginning that is able to adapt, to be adaptable to different market conditions, different diverse market conditions.
I can start with that. If I understand the question correctly, what was just described is the beauty of the United States market. You know, it affords you the opportunity to build something that you can quickly have access to resources, innovation, ideas, different types of profiles, markets. You can test, you can spin, you can pivot. But at the same time, you have to be extremely focused and organized, and have something that, as said before, solves the problem for a very specific audience and a very specific space. So the balance here is that how do you walk into a candy store as a child and start picking from every shelf versus staying extremely focused and being successful, and then expanding into other areas, other locations, other modules, other profiles as you go. So that balance of focus and structure in kind of in a place that allows you the innovative pivoting and flexibility is a big part of how do you increase your probability of success.
Okay. And we have a question for the ambassador. Ambassador, you have been to Cyprus for a while now, and you have gotten an idea of the environment here in Cyprus. What is perhaps the competitive advantage that Cypriots could have, and how difficult is it to penetrate the US market, being from such a small country that probably very few people have heard of in the market?
I don't think in the context that we're talking about where you're from is what matters. What matters is your product, and a number of the entrepreneurs that have talked this evening have really emphasized that particular point. Part of it is to remember to protect confidence. If you don't seem convinced by your own product, it's going to be very hard to get anybody in the United States to pay attention. So it is a competitive market, no question. But if you have a good product that you've been able to get a patent for, in the United States, as one of our speakers pointed out earlier, and I apologize, I forget who it was, so many of our most successful entrepreneurs are actually immigrants or people that came from outside the United States. Part of it's that drive. Part of it is also that they come in and see things through a different lens. And bringing that outside perspective, they see solutions to problem sets that those that are more comfortable in the market may not even realize that problem set exists. So I don't think that anyone should look at it as coming from Cyprus, and Cyprus being such a small country, that makes a difference. In fact, I would argue the unique perspective and advantages that you have here can actually be helpful. But you need a good product, you need a good business plan, you need to have confidence, and many of the other pieces of advice that came out before. And I would also stress the importance of mentorship. There's a lot of entrepreneurship mentor networks. Some of the programs that I mentioned earlier have those networks attached. Many of those that have spoken today have their own networks, whether I think it was the Hellenic Initiative, for example. There's many others out there. Cyprus Seeds has done great work on some mentorship opportunities as well. I know that's a lot of what Denise has done too, but the mentorship is really, really important. Yes, start with your internet research, but talk to people.
That's right.
Yeah, in terms of those supportive groups, you mentioned some great ones like MIT Enterprise Forum Greece, our work at Hellenic Innovation Network. There are others within the United States. And then there are also industry groups. You've got associations that have an interest in helping the members of their association. And then there are some great incubators in the US that really draw on immigrants. So Mass Challenge is one that's in Boston, and actually it's around the world, but it started in Boston, and it's free of charge, it's non-dilutive, they don't take any equity, and it's a great way for a company coming out of Cyprus to land, to have space, to have some support, and to start to build their network before they actually start renting an office and hire a team. So it's a great way to just dip their toe into the US market and get off the ground and have a safe landing spot.
Okay, and that's actually a very nice pass to a question for Maria. Do we have any examples of companies, mature growth stage companies or startups that have been supported and made it to the US, supported by the Greek or Cypriot diaspora?
Actually, Andreas is more suitable to answer this question. But before I give it to Andreas, I can definitely confirm what Marina said, that Mass Challenge, which I visited recently, is a great place for the Cypriots perhaps to spend a few months, be supported to network in Boston, especially if it's biotech companies, because I have a feeling that Boston is a big hype for biotech more than anything, but for other sectors as well. So Mass Challenge, yes. And to your question, Monica, I think I don't know of any Cypriot companies who made it to the US. Andreas is there to tell us if I'm wrong. I can say, though, that for the teams being supported by Cyprus Seeds, for the market for most of them is the US. The market they're looking to scale up is the US. We have biotech, and definitely the US is what they want to explore. We have solar energy, and that again is looking into the US. So that I can say. But Andrea,
Thanks
maybe you're aware of some companies.
Thanks for handing off the most difficult question. But no, thanks, Maria. No, actually, yes, there are. But let me start with this. Define, make it. Okay, there's many different milestones before you make it. And what does make it mean, right? So I can tell you that we work with, we've been at this for about 2 years. Keep an eye on 3 of our companies. They will make it, but they made it already as far as I'm concerned. MBO Diagnostics, one of our companies, purebred Cypriot company, phenomenal scientists. They just presented to the BioNJ Association their COVID-19 research.
Can we mention their name?
Yeah, MBO Diagnostics. Phenomenal. They have some phenomenal proprietary technology in food diagnostics with Listeria bacteria and pesticides. Made it, as far as I'm concerned, they made it. They have a plan. They're on their way. ProMed, another Cypriot company, they're working with collagen for medical grade research. They're well on their way. And Gino, a toy company out of Limassol, fully, Limassol-based factory. They're selling on Amazon. They're selling in the United States. Proto.io, a phenomenal collaboration platform, SaaS. We're working with the 2 founders. They've been selling for years globally. These are Cypriots, as Cypriot as they get. And they are making it. One of the things that we must do better is actually promote these companies. We as a country, they should be the poster children, and many more. There are other companies, but I want to make sure that, as far as we're concerned, making it is a combination of milestones that are based on your planning. So, in my mind, they're making it, So whatever your definition of make it is, there are Cypriot companies that are making it, and there will be others if we continue on this trajectory.
I would say that I would define making it as acquiring a client in the US for now, and then it's a step-by-step approach. It's not something that even mature companies have difficulty defining what making it is.
That's right.
Are there any signs that a startup, because I'm guessing from the audience, the majority are startups, are there signs that a company is ready to expand to the US? For example, you need to know your competition. You need to have the ability to scale, things that we mentioned before. how important, and I would like to ask George, how important is it to have a product market fit, to be at the time that the market needs your specific product?
Sure. So for us, the first step was to find developing partners, customers that had a problem, that they were willing to spend their time to help us create that solution. That's how we started. Granted, we started in the US, we didn't start in Cyprus, but each market is different. And now that we're selling to Latin America and Europe and Asia, in each market we go, we find a developing partner because we know that their needs will be a little bit different. So search for a developing partner. These developing partners don't pay, and that's okay. They still provide a lot of value. After that, we build a team. When we first started, we were just 2 co-founders. When I say we build a team, we didn't hire 100 people. We just hired the core team. It was 5 of us. And that helped us last a long time because we didn't hire people that were not necessary at the beginning. Then we found a company that was working in our market, helping our customers find new technologies. We reached out to them and we said, hey, give us a chance, let us pitch to you. And they did, they heard us out. And it ended up being a great win for us because they took us to so many different customers. And our customers are cities, municipalities, but any type of customer, especially on the B2B side, they will have some sort of consulting firm that will help them out. So you can find those. We also found advisors that were in the industry and we gave them some shares. We didn't pay them because we didn't have money at the time, but we gave them shares because now they have skin in the game and they made introductions to us. Then we created a product that we thought would solve their problem, but it wasn't quite ready yet. They kept using it and giving us feedback, and we would change it. It took us probably 2 years to come out with a product that solves the problem for several customers, not just 1 or 2. And it's very important for that product market fit. And it sounds like it's a long time, 2 years, but typically it's 18 months to 2 years. And I'm sure Andreas and Marina and others would agree. Yeah. So once we found that product, we then invested money to make it scalable. And now instead of a month for 1 customer deployment, it takes us just a few minutes. But we wouldn't have done that from the beginning because if we did, it would be all a waste. So you kind of have to follow steps, and the customer would be your first step. Find the customer that has the pain, and the customer will help you generate the product that helps with their problem. And once you have so many of them, you will come up with a formula that works for the masses.
Thank you,
Monica?
As you mentioned, you and Marina started your companies in the US because you were studying at US universities. We have a question which is quite interesting, and it's related to what I have just said. Is it how easy is it to convince investors to invest in further optimizing a technology that has been originally conceptualized and validated in Cyprus? So how easy is it to make the bridge and the transition from being in Cyprus, having an early stage technology, and talking to investors in the US about further optimizing that technology in their market? I don't know if anybody would like to tackle this question because it's quite difficult.
Well, I mean, the question, if the technology is patented, if there's a strong differentiated technology, investors don't care where it comes from.
Right.
In fact, they might view it very positively if it came from somewhere more remote, as long as it's protected by patents in the United States or know-how or something like that. It doesn't, I would say they would be largely indifferent as to where it was generated.
Right. That's a good point. And if I may just add to it, the ambassador said it early on, Maria just said it now. Forget about where it's coming from at this point. If it solves a problem, you will attract the attention of a potential partner, whatever that partner means, investor, whatever it is. At one point in the discussion, one may seriously consider of establishing something in the United States. I think it was said before at one point. But the original engagement is about, are you solving a problem? Did you come up with an idea that will get people's attention? The other thing that is incredibly important to understand, the same way that we've discussed about the diversity of business in the United States, the customer, the buyer, there's also a diversity of investors. There are people that are looking for specific innovation that comes outside of the United States. So the diversity doesn't only apply on the buyer of your product and service, it also applies to who may want to partner with you. So you have to look at it from those perspectives. You know, and that's something that we need to make sure that Cypriots, we're talking about Cyprus, Greece, we need to not be concerned about how small we are or how big the island is and how much people know us or don't know us. Focus on the solution that you're providing to a problem, and everything else will come along.
Is having a business plan, a carefully structured business plan with a carefully structured market entry strategy important for startups when considering entering the US market? And the second part of the question is, where should that market entry strategy focus in case we don't have a patented product or a patentable product? Where would the USP lie in lower price, on product superiority? What would the market in the US appreciate more in this case? For example, in software, I'm talking about cases where we're talking about SaaS solutions, for example. Again, feel free to volunteer.
I'll start. I think the American market will appreciate anything that provides value, whether that is a lower cost or a better product. It's still providing value to someone. So that would be indifferent.
Okay.
I think it's the same answer as the one before.
Okay.
What solution are you bringing? How valuable is it? How different is it? How scalable is it? All those are the things that an investor or anyone will look at, and then you take it from there.
Yeah, and in terms of the question about the business plan, before entering the US market, the entrepreneur needs to know in his bones or her bones what the customer problem is, what the value proposition is, the product differentiation. That all needs to be extremely clear and articulately presented to customers, and therefore whether or not it's written in a business plan is sort of irrelevant, because that should all be internalized by that point. You're not going to be able to expand to the US if you're still drafting words on a business plan. That you should have that all figured out before going to the US.
For sure. And please.
And to add something to what Marina said, from our experience, we had everything sorted out at the beginning when we first started, but we wrote an actual business plan, many pages. And we quickly realized that in order for us to stay agile, we had to kill the words, kill the 50-page document, and convert it to some slides. Of course, that meant that we had to know our business plan and be able to explain every word we wrote down. But my advice is don't spend 50 pages to write the business plan, because it's going to change the week after, and you're going to have to write it again, and that's a lot of waste. So write it in PowerPoint, but make sure you know it. That's what we've done later on after we learned, and it worked beautifully.
George,
and the advantage of PowerPoint also is that writing something so succinct with very few words forces you to really hone in on the message, on the actual specifics of what you're doing. It's very easy to hide behind words. So the fewer words, the better. That will show that you really know exactly what it is, who are you targeting, and for what reason.
yeah, and if I just close that one, as someone that reviews a fair amount of plans, I don't think we'll go beyond 3 lines or 4 lines. It's just, the attention span is just not there anymore. So I'm with George. Don't kill any more trees. Let's just, go right to the point and be flexible, because you will change. The core stays the same, but you will change to adjust.
Sure.
But what George is saying, I guess, is that elevator pitch should be in place before starting to talk to investors, and one should practice to pitch, and practice is very important, more than the business plan. I guess that's what you're saying, Yorgo.
Yes, definitely. That practicing is another webinar. It takes a lot of practice, and be sure that it's smooth, because presentation is key in anything we do, of course, right? So definitely that is important.
Well, on that note, because we are slowly coming to a close, I would like to ask a final question to all of you, just to go around with the same order that we started, the ambassador, Andreas, Marina, George, and Maria. Since we are living in 2020 and we are going through a lot of challenges, we cannot avoid talking about the global pandemic and the opportunities or obstacles that have been created. How do we expect the climate to change, or the opportunities to shift with COVID-19 in the next few months, or have you witnessed any changes already, Ambassador?
It's a great question, Monica, but what I would also say is that every crisis is someone's opportunity, right? And if you have a really good idea, if you have a really good solution to a problem, that's going to come through regardless of the pandemic. It may not happen as quickly as you initially anticipated, perhaps because there's a lot of distractions for a lot of folks right now, but the pandemic can actually be an opportunity. And I was just saying yesterday to someone, I actually see it as an opportunity to grow the U.S. Cypriot Economic Partnership, because you all have done such a good job in handling the pandemic here on the island and gotten international recognition for that competence, that some of those questions about what about Cyprus, and again, I agree, it doesn't matter at all where anybody or any idea is from, but it puts a little bit something in the bank that someone can draw on going forward. So yes, there's going to be changes, but a good entrepreneur, I think early on, Andreas was saying flexibility and agility. Well, those are the keys in the response.
Thank you, Ambassador. Andreas?
I couldn't agree anymore, and I can even give you some specific examples. Put aside the horrible things that come with these types of situations that we're in. Put all that aside, and for a minute or two, there's the negative that you see from a business perspective is no different than the financial slowdowns that happen across many times, up and down. From our perspective, it slows down because people's attention is diverted to somewhere else, right? So where you're ready to sell your product, when you're ready to move to the next thing as a startup, you're now pausing and or slowing down your growth because you just can't get people's attention. No matter how great your opportunity is, if a company is dealing with saving their employees and keeping their doors open, chances are the priority of listening to your pitch kind of changes. So it kind of pauses and or slows down or throws some speed bumps in your ability to grow is one thing. One of the positive things is you better take some time and rethink maybe your value proposition. When we come out of this, a lot of things will change. Is your value proposition in need of an adjustment, knowing that as we go back, there will be some new normals? Just there will be. So is there some thinking that needs to happen while things are slowed down to actually make your company more relevant or your solution more relevant going forward? If you're looking for money, you may be in areas that actually there's more money than there was before. There's some areas right now that there's plenty of money to be invested in. If you're in the healthcare, if you're in the logistics, if you're into online collaboration, if you're into some specific industries that are flourishing right now, supply chain, logistics. I mean, there's opportunity. There's others that are slowing down. So my advice would be, it is what it is. We have to deal with it. We'll come out of it. There will be some different things. Is how can you don't sit in the corner and if crawl in a corner and just sit there and wait for it to end. Take advantage of this situation and see if you can further yourself to the next point.
Thank you, Andrea. Thank you. Marina?
Yeah, so I agree with everything that's been said. Crisis equals opportunity. Any major shift in the markets always provides opportunity. The most obvious one in this case comes from a negative. The negative of very high unemployment is that as a startup, you can now hire people. There's an availability of talent and access to talent. I know, in startups, over the last few years, it's become extremely expensive and difficult in the Boston area to hire great talent because they're getting hired away by other large firms that are extremely well funded. So for a startup, high unemployment is a great thing. And it also offers opportunity in other ways that are somewhat surprising. So in our little operation at Hellenic Innovation Network, we coordinate networking events to connect the Greek diaspora from Greece and Cyprus to that in the United States. And we've always held in-person events, and we were absolutely devastated when the May event had to be canceled at MIT, and then realized that there was this opportunity to do online events, which opened up a world both of our audience and a world of speakers that previously were inaccessible to us. So it can touch a business in many surprising ways, what can open up as a result of something being closed down. The other thing that I've just witnessed as a consumer is the efficiency of the organizations that I interact with now. If you have to have some sort of physical presence, things are run by a clock. You come in at a certain schedule. You're no longer waiting in line. You come in at a specific time. You go in, you do your business, and you get out. Tremendous efficiency I've seen in the U.S. government. I had to renew some papers, and it was amazing. I made an online appointment. I went there. I was in and out in 5 minutes. So I think that some of these efficiencies that have been learned, also telehealth. I've had a couple of doctor's appointments with my cell phone, and these kinds of things, people have been talking about them for years and years, and they just weren't happening. And I think now that we've all become accustomed to it, I don't think we're going to go backwards.
Thank you, Marina. Fantastic. George?
I want to echo what everyone said. in fact, Sun Tzu said, where there is chaos, there is opportunity. And certainly this is the case here. Virtual solutions are thriving now. Zoom is soaring. Our solution is virtual, and we've been growing better than what we thought we would back in January. So it's all about solving problems, and timing is the #1 factor of company success when you look at the data. Companies' survival and success, right? So it's not money, it's not the technology or the team. The #1, all those things matter, but the #1 reason for success is timing. So I would look at the solution that you've been working on and you're passionate about, and if needed, adapt to the current environment.
Thank you, George. And Maria?
I'll be brief. I think one of the messages, one of the lessons of this COVID-19 is that we live in uncertainty, and we will continue to live in uncertainty. So a very good point made by the ambassador and Andreas about being agile and flexible from now on. That is so true, in my opinion. And I know entrepreneurs by nature are agile and flexible. So it might be an economic crisis, but at the same time, I think it's an opportunity for the creation of more entrepreneurs. And finally, what Marina said, I think is extremely important. The COVID has resulted to huge unemployment, global huge unemployment, but I believe it might create opportunities for employment of talented people by some of the high potential startups.
Thank you, Maria. And I'm very happy that we are ending this in a very positive note. For me, the opportunity from COVID-19 is the fact that geographical barriers have completely been demolished. Mm-hmm. We are stuck in our home countries, and so physically we cannot travel, but it's not expected to travel anymore. So the online world is connecting us. It's booming or zooming, and it's connecting us to all sorts of places in the world. And I think it's a great opportunity for entrepreneurs to get in touch with investors or clients in other countries, and especially the US. Which is our topic today, without any frictions or the need to travel anywhere. So one would usually turn to the audience for an applause, but we are online, so I cannot do that. Once again, I'd like to thank our fantastic speakers for their insights. I'm particularly thankful for your prompt response to AmCham's invitation to participate in today's panel discussion, and your willingness to spend time out of your business schedules to be with us. I would also like to thank the audience for their participation and apologize if we could not answer all of your questions, but I think we have given food for thought and maybe set the context for a follow-up event. On behalf of AmCham Cyprus, thank you for joining us. For the people in the US, have a nice evening and have a nice day. And for the people in Cyprus, have a nice evening. Goodbye.
Thank you.
Good to be.
Bye-bye.
Bye.